little thing about including moderators. That'll be great one day, huh? Welcome, beautiful souls. Thank you for watching, liking, sharing, subscribing, and paying attention to my little family's journey through things. Currently sitting outside the motel that we're kind of stationed at. We have one more week here, and I'm told by those who have helped us with different organizations and some friends that funds are out. So we're in a space of like, it's funny, before I hit go on doing the live, I was like, I know I'm not doing a reading right now, but I want some cards that speak to this journey. And it's funny because, like, I got weight and bored. And what's funny is they first showed up on this side. I feel like these are more relevant, but this side is here too because so got the weight and bored, right? And so it's like, yeah, like we gotta wait. It's funny because I'm kind of like bored. Like I don't know that I'm bored because there's things I have to do. Like I have to go to the food bank. I have to do the free laundry thing. I have to talk to like 10 people every day. I have to make sure my stuff's together, my paperwork's in order, my boys are taken care of, and stuff like that. So it's like bored. But then I'm like, you know what? It is kind of boring. Like even though I have things that I have to do, there is some amount of boring in it. But I know mostly it's like I'm like bored with the weight in a weird sort of way. But what resonated with me was the other side of the cards are weight and bored, right? And what that made me think about is kind of like that on the other side of the waiting, as in time, and the boredom, is like building something, using the weight of the boards to build something, to get somewhere, to do something. And I was just thinking about it earlier. This is part of when it was like I've been meaning to do this for a little while. I want to add it to the our GoFundMe fundraiser, which, by the way, there's a link below in the description box if you're able to be an Earth Angel for us or share it at least if you could, because you never know who could send something, and like every few dollars counts right now and helps. But what I was thinking about is my oldest son's school. There's a resource person there who has been helping. She's paid for our hotel room a couple of times. She paid for she paid for the title transfer on my car before it got like incredibly out of hand. Paid for a storage for my oldest son's stuff so that we didn't have to figure out where to put it or cram it into our hotel room while we wait for housing. And we are very very close. The challenge is I don't know how close because, well, the moving parts in it are humans, and like every time we're told it'll be this week or it'll be this weekend or it'll be next week, it's like then there's another week or another thing. And I mean, what's funny is like in the past, I could have seen myself being in a place, like, this is so messed up, man, so messed up. And I know so many people that are in similar positions and they do feel that way. But I actually feel grateful because I'm like, this is interesting. Like this adds it's like more plot twists to our journey story. It does, it's one of those, like, it makes me wonder, like, what is it that we're supposed to be learning or experiencing in this moment, or what do we get out of this? And it's kind of funny. It's like one of the things that I look at, especially with that board card, like that as in boredom, is like I have not really gotten much rest through these past like 15 months, this journey of homelessness. I've really not. And the car is not working very well. I'm fairly confident the head gasket is about to go. And so there's not much of anything I can do. I'm waiting on doctor's appointments. I just finally got an optometrist appointment out of the way, and we'll have my first official pair of glasses in 2 weeks. I might go into that later, but the funny thing is, basically, and I knew this, kind of knew this from early on because I was supposed to have glasses as a kid. My parents never got them for me. And but effectively, my right eye is mostly just for decoration. Like my brain does not fully register or process the at least the 3D stuff coming in there. My oldest son and I kind of joked about it's my spiritual eye, and then we'd have jokes about I'm actually a cyclops. I just have two eyes, so I look like everybody else, um, which made both of my kids laugh. But like, so things are getting done, but like in these moments when it's like, I've learned in the past, like when spirit makes it so there isn't, you can't travel, you can't work, like, you know, my sciatic, or not my sciatic, my SI, my sacroiliac joint is out again. I have SI joint dysfunction and other things going on, that like trying to work or be in other places is not a thing right now. We are waiting. Thank me. We are waiting on housing, and then I can kind of approach things in a little bit different manner and figure out, like, okay, which, you know, it's another crossroads. Which thing do I do? Do I go towards disability because it's complicated to work? Do I go back to school and learn to do something that's more intellectual and fits in with my physical challenges, because I can't just sit all day either? And or do I, you know, go in towards work first and just try to kind of make myself do the things that others do in what, I don't want to say limited areas that I'm trained in, but what areas I have enough on my resume to be able to walk in and get a job with, that sort of thing. And but it's funny because, like, I come back to these spaces where it's like, well, I know the input that I'm getting from spirit is that this is a resting point, because I can't really do a lot. I can't push my car a lot. I can't really do a lot of things. I've been getting a little more rest, you know, and I'm still exhausted. I'm still exhausted, but like, it does, you know, it's one of those, okay, good, I could see this. This is nice. Like, I'm grateful that when we do move in, presuming that it's before we run out of shelter, that I should be less exhausted. And even at that, like, I've got other people who are like, well, you know, we can't get any more funding from this grant or this place or this organization, but there's these shelters that we found for you, you know, and so we might end up going and staying in a shelter for a little bit. Just really grateful that like quarantine type stuff is not going on so much, because that scared me early on when it was like looking at going to shelters. It's like, oh, that's where a lot of people are going to be sick. You know, like, I don't want to do that. And thankfully spirit helped us avoid that. But like, otherwise, you know, I mean, they're there if you need them, you know. And I'm like not above that stuff, though I do know with two autistic boys it can be much more uncomfortable and distressing for them to be in a place like that where you're sharing with other people, and don't really have any privacy or anything like that. So I'm still hoping and praying that this is the week. Like, this is the week that we're moving in. We're getting the keys, you know, like we got till the 17th before the room is out. So we're hoping that we get it by then. And what's interesting is the amount of like input that is coming back, that's coming towards me. Like, one of the resource people that we have, like, she really tried to help us a lot with, you know, with rooms and various things like that, and then told me today, like, she's like, I covered what I could for the last of the room, and unfortunately I think that's going to be the last that I can help you with. That's like the last thing, like money wise, that I can get, you know, my upper ups to approve for you guys. And I didn't, you know, I'm kind of used to that. Like, people are not banks, and unfortunately I don't have the credit to work with a bank. So like, I don't expect things to last forever. I try not to milk it till it's all dry, because like, then, you know, if we need something later, it's a little challenging. um Doing, you know, it's a little challenging to look at it from two angles and be like, in one angle we need help right now, but I'm also keenly aware that oftentimes, even though we need help right now, we might need help later, and it might be in a, you know, a different worse position, especially with my physical stuff. Like, yeah, it feels like right now we need the help, but should I wait and save it till later and try to rough it in the middle, right? And the funny thing is like, this, yeah, I don't know, in this moment it's like, okay, well, let's get the max help that we can get right now, and just pray that we're gonna get in there. But like, when she told me like that was it, I was like, I understand. Like, it wasn't like there was no part of me that was like, oh, this is horrible, or she could do more, or they could do more, or blah blah blah. Like, no, it's just like, okay, thank you for the clarity. Like, it's all you get. You know. And as I've told many people, and it always makes my therapist laugh, because with my ADHD, I'm like, I love clarity. I love very clear rules without wiggle room or ambiguity. Like, just be clear with me. When you are clear with me, you are direct, and there's like, not a bunch of fluff in there, then I know. Like, I know where the boundaries are. I know what things I can do. I know what I can work with and can't work with and things like that, right? And but she was apparently feeling some deeper empathy for us. And I get it, like, and she's met and worked with my oldest son at his school, and like, oh, I get it. And he's a Pisces too, so you totally feel for him. Like, he's always gotten that throughout his life, and I love that he gets that. He deserves that. So she was like, I hope that you guys don't feel abandoned. Like, that's not my intention. And I was like, oh, aren't you delightful? Like, I didn't say that, but I'm like, oh, aren't you just delicious? And I was like, thank you for being born. Like, you did all that you could to help us with all that you had, in terms of resources, until there was no more. And like, that made a difference. Like, we made it through the freezing weather. We were in a room for Christmas and New Year's. Like, we were the place that we're at right now. We can have the kittens inside. So like, like, please feel good about yourself. Like, I didn't expect that things would go, that there would be infinite funds. And I also, like, we were supposed to move into our new place last month, and 2 months before that. So like, and now it's down to it's next week, it's next week, it's next week, it's next week, right? So like, I get it, but you have helped us, and that's amazing. But it made me think about, there's kind of a theme of stuff. Unfortunately, because of my DM's karmic journey, and he's the father of both of my sons, he has left a space in my oldest son's heart, especially, and that's created fears of abandonment. And I mean, it's I'm gonna say, in the irony of it, even in having more custody over our youngest than I do, he's left a similar kind of hole in our youngest heart. He works harder to amend that, but he doesn't really put in the effort with our oldest. And so we've been talking about like abandonment stuff lately. And I'm grateful that we have a therapist. So it's not just me, it's not just mom saying this and saying that, like, oh, it'll be okay and not everybody will leave you and things like that. Though, it's not just my DM stuff. Like, in the journey that we've had, um, through homelessness, like, there's been a fair amount of places that we thought would work out where he was able to make a few friends. And yes, I'm aware that I need to quit smoking soon. It's my only vice left. So once we're in housing, that's my next goal, to work on that a lot more. I'm excited to be smoke free soon. In any case, like, this thing of abandonment came up. And what's interesting is, like, when she said, like, I hope you don't feel abandoned, I realized, like, genuinely in that moment, I don't. And I did used to have really big fears of abandonment. And, and they showed most especially when when we ended up being unhoused and we had to leave behind my priority family and we had to do things like that. Like, it definitely was like, who's going to help us? Like, I didn't think that almost anybody would help us. I mean, I didn't think nobody would help us, but I didn't think as many people who have helped us would help us, or that we would get this far. And I didn't know what all it would require for me to support myself and two sons, and to be able to do all the things that I've had challenges with before. Though, because I took the risk, I took the leap of faith, the gamble, whatever you want to call it, I realized, you know what, no, there are a lot of people that would help us. And I put in a lot of my time and energy in the past when we were housed, and had access to finances and things like that, to voluntarily help people, just because I like helping people. And most of those people reached back and have been some of our main earth angels, you know what I mean? And I also realized too, like, even in the beginning of it, when I didn't think any like person would help, I chose to have faith that spirit would help. And so I have this like firm foundation in that like, even if people aren't helping, that doesn't mean we're not getting help, and it doesn't mean that we're alone, and it doesn't mean that spirit's not helping. And those are some of the things that, like, I talk with my kiddos about, like, even when it all seems darkest, and it seems like things are not going well, or it feels like people don't stick around, or things like that, just remember, like, spirit is always there, and there's usually just something, like, it's not that the past people abandoned you, it's that your time with them was only meant to be a short chapter in your journey, so you could learn something that you could take to the next space, take to the next friendship, take to the next relationship, take, or take back to other relationships and things like that. There's things that you learn along the way, and you don't tend to make the same mistakes as you did before. You don't tend to align with the same people that you did before. And it made me think about those of you too, who I'm sure that collectively there's a lot of this. I mean, especially, we got Mars retrograde right now in Gemini. It's going to be going direct soon. And we have Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. And like, those are two very masculine, fatherly wound sort of things to face, and then we had the Cancer full moon, mother wounds, things like that. So like these parental wounds, and if you were in cycles of abandonment, through the generations, and it's not just physical abandonment, there could be emotional abandonment. There's many forms of abandonment that can occur, that you could end up carrying with you. And so I'm aware that collectively there's probably a fair amount of people who are also like learning to alchemize this energy. In any case, man, I still remember some of the early videos that I did, like when we were sleeping in the car in parks, and I was trying to figure out, like, how can we do this? And it's funny because as frustrated as I feel like I would be justified in feeling right now in the process, I just feel grateful. Like, I've tried everything, and I didn't know in the beginning when people were like, "Well, reach out to these organizations," that they don't really help you until you've been homeless for at least a year, or you've had like 3 major bouts of homelessness over the last 3 years. Like, they don't. They don't have enough resources to just help every person that ends up homeless. And oftentimes, if we push ourselves, we can find situations. Though I know that I'm an example of somebody that, like, I fucking tried. You guys have been here on the vlogs listening to me talk about it, like trying to do work, rent, trade stuff at alpaca ranches and camping in backyards and staying in parks and truck stops and like garages and just like everything that you can imagine. Like, I really genuinely wanted to try to be able to do stuff myself, and not take more of the resources of the system. I'm in a place now where it's like, okay, if nothing else, we need that help for a little while. It doesn't mean that I have to just like go, okay, I'm in the system and be done. Though I'm also aware that because I've been in the welfare system for a long time, that it requires effort to get out of it. You know what I mean? It requires effort to push through and be like, because the gaps in between are not always the easiest ones to get through to get to that next step. You know what I mean? And but like, I don't look at this as like the end of things, or like, I look at it like, okay, good, thank you, spirit, like, thank you, people, because this is what we need to get to that next step, to start the new chapter of our journey, and do it with a better foundation and better footing and more resources, which is something that we need. Like, I genuinely did. I'm not gonna say I used up all of our resources, but I used what I could get in order to get us through it, and I tried to do so as honorably as possible and stick with my integrity and honor as much as I possibly could. And I mean, at least according to my kids, I believe that I've successfully done that. Like, and it's not perfect. I'm human. There's ego moments. There's times when I've not held my highest integrity, though I think for the most part that I have. And I feel like the rewards of that are getting to move forward into housing. That being said, part of why I'm doing this vlog is to ask for your assistance, because I'm keenly aware that there are likely going to be a few more delays. I don't know how long. I'm hoping not very long. But I'm also looking at, like, it's humans that are doing this. They're doing their best, but a lot of them are behind from weather stuff, holiday stuff, and so many people needing help. It's not just my little family that's getting help or needs help. So they're putting in their time, and I'm grateful for them. Though I'm also aware that, like, the places that have been out of funds, like, if we need another week here, it needs to get in now, because it takes a while for GoFundMe to get the funds to me. And so in order to be able to ensure that me and my boys have housing. Like, we need to be able to get that funds in, and it's not just that. Like, without being able to work, there are things in the middle that have to get done. If nothing else, I've connected with enough resources that we can do a lot of things that are covered, like laundry and food and stuff like that. Though I still have to be able to get there, and even if it's not, by car, which requires gas, which it'd be nice to get some more repairs in. Then it needs to be bus passes, and that stuff's not exactly cheap. And there's plenty of other things we got to get done. And then I'm also keenly aware that just because we get into housing does not mean we're suddenly going to be, everything's going to be covered and paid for and things like that. Like, it takes a minute to find your new bearings in a new situation. And there are things, we got to get my youngest a bed and a frame, and get a couch and do other things that we need, so that we all have a sleeping space and we can all, do what we need to. And so here I am, your smoking oracle. And what I'm hoping is that if you find a space in your heart, and if you can give $2, $5, it's fantastic. I know some people have been able to give larger portions. I'm so grateful for those every time. Though, if if you can give a little bit, and then if you could share stuff out there, I found 9 times out of 10 that, like, when I share it, yes, there are people that help. Though when other people share it, you're like, hey, I've been following this person. I really appreciate them. Would you help them out? Like, there tends to be more assistance. There tends to be more empathy and more earth angels, and also it creates a far wider reach. Like, I only have so many people that I know on my Facebook. I can only reach so many of you here on this YouTube and things like that. So if you're, sometimes being able to share our fundraiser almost does more than just you giving a donation. And I know there are many of you earth angels out there who have, either been there with me since day one, or not long after, who can appreciate what we're going through. And if nothing else, like, I send you so many blessings in your journeys, because I know a lot of you are also going through tough stuff. And it is my hope that if I can do nothing else, that I can provide some content that lifts your heart. And I'm definitely going to work on doing more of that, especially when we're in housing. Though for right now, the link is below. If you're able to send any funds, that's fantastic. If you're able to share it, thank you. Well, y'all, until next time, be well.